Hi everyone, and welcome back to Qigong of Tulsa. I'm sitting here with one of my senior students, Pejman Ebadi, and he is helping us put together some videos to, again, put on YouTube, but also to help teach people who don't understand what we do in the school and in general what Qigong is. So thank you for coming back, and for those of you that this is the first time you've come to Qigong of Tulsa, welcome, and please come back and see us, and I hope that what you see on the channel is very helpful.
So today we're actually talking about one of my personal favorite topics, which is the yin-yang, the symbol of yin-yang and the meaning behind the yin-yang or the yin-yang. And this symbol has been immensely influential in my life. I have gained so much wisdom and understanding about life just by looking at this symbol and understanding it. And today, I thought who better to speak about yin-yang than my teacher here, Mr. Tom Bowman, my Sifu, because Qigong has within it, and Taoism, I would say, has within it inherent the yin-yang symbol. And a lot of the knowledge that is in Qigong comes from the understanding of the yin and the yang and basically the balance between the two as well. So today, Mr. Tom Bowman is going to talk about what is yin-yang and especially what is yin-yang, yin and yang or yin-yang in Qigong. So would you like to start us off on that?
Sure. One of the things that we run into for those of us that teach classical Chinese medicine or traditional Chinese medicine, depending on what camp you're in, the questions that we run into are unfortunately based upon the use of Chinese terminology. And in many cases, that Chinese terminology does not translate into, say, Western languages. Yin and yang is essentially Newton's fourth law. Or third law. I said fourth, I meant third law, which means for every action there's an equal reaction. And our whole body, our whole being, if you will, on this earth is based on those two principles. And the fact that, for instance, if you look at a bridge, you have the columns that are holding up the bridge. You have the force of the weight of the bridge on those columns. And what we have to do when we design a bridge like that is we have to make those columns that are supporting the span of the bridge, we have to make those columns strong enough to withstand and hold the bridge in place. When we have a failure in one or the other, be it on the bridge itself or on the supporting columns, then when we have a failure, then what you have there is not a equal reaction to the situation, but you have an unequal reaction that causes the failure of the bridge. Same thing occurs with our body. A lot of parts of our body operate in the duality state. And before I go a lot into that, let me just also comment or make the statement that, and it is a something to remember, the yin and yang used for us physically is representing a state of being. You could be too yang, which means you're radiating. You could be too yin, which means you're receptive. And as we go further into the translation, we'll get into parts of the body that live or act. What's the word I'm trying to say? Work in that duality. Case in point, for instance, our muscles. Our skeletal muscles are always in pair. When one is in the yang, which is using force, the opposite muscle is in yin, and it's baby contracting when the other one is expanding. You have a duality in the fibers in your muscles. You have slow twitch fibers, and then you have fast twitch fibers. One is for speed, The other one is for size and strength and mass. That being said, you also, for those of you that are familiar with yoga, you know, a lot of the terminology in yoga and Buddhist Qigong is the use of chakras. And if you're familiar with chakras, you're going to have a dual function going on there as well. And the perfect example is your crown versus your root. So there's your duality in that. And the same thing, as you go down the front of the body, you have a reciprocating chakra in the back. And it's all located in the center of your body. So that's what yin and yang is. It's an action-reaction. And but it's a state of being. It is not a force. It is a state of being. The force that creates the state of yin and yang, or the forces rather, is Kan for water and Li for fire. I know we're using old terminology again.
That's from Qigong.
From Qigong, right. And water or Kan simply represents that you have no energy, you're cold, you're cool, and then you have Li, which is considered fire, translates fire, means you're hot, you're wasting energy. And either one of those, you know, when it's more prevalent than the other one, causes you to be in either a physical state of yin, which is you're sick, you're cold, you're not doing too well, or yang, which means you have a fever. And, you know, the bottom line is either one of those represents a situation by which or through which your energy is not optimal, or your bioelectricity is not functioning correctly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how does Qigong in particular look at the yin-yang? Because for me personally in my life, the yin-yang serves as a reminder of how to get back in balance, and that balance has a little bit of the other side within it. So for example, like, because there's those two dots in each side, and I think that's actually really significant. Instead of the yin-yang symbol being just these two halves completely apart, there is a little bit of each within the other one, which I think is what makes the yin-yang symbol stand out versus just like a half, right? And I also, for me, I also look at it and gain insight from it in my own life by thinking that in what ways in my life am I out of balance? In what ways am I too yang, too much activity, and not enough rest? In what ways I'm too much slothful in some ways, and way too much non-activity and inaction, and how can I bring more action to it? And I think, like, to bring somewhat astrology into this too, my symbol on astrology is that it's balance, is a Libra. And so I've always, like, from an early age, ever since I learned about astrology, I always sought this idea of wanting to be the perfect balance between just all aspects of myself. And the yin yang, I have a big symbol of yin yang on my wall in my room just to serve as a reminder. And I've actually done this thing where I've written, like, on little sticky notes, written words, like, for example, like flow on one side, and I've put it on one side of the yin yang, and I put structure on another side. Because in my life, I've been known to just, like, lose my balance and go way too much into one side. Like, there was a season where I was all about lifting weights. And then I completely quit and just did yoga for like a whole year. And in neither of those situations did I feel completely balanced and fully, like, centered. But for me, that the yin yang symbol serves as a reminder to bring both. It's both. It's not just one. And so I wanted to see in Qigong, how does the yin yang show up? Because it's about balance, but what does that look like when it's related to Qigong?
Okay. In Qigong training, you know, and you've experienced this, when we do Titsuen Kyun, the form, you know, for the martial form, it's all strength, it's all power.
Yeah, it's all tense.
Tense and all that. Whereas that being your yang, and then we turn right around and then we do sets like palms,
Very relaxed.
very relaxed and total yin.
Yeah. So actually, I think this is a good segue right here. If you were to put a chart and put here yang, and it's like yang attributes underneath it, and you would put yin right here and yin attributes underneath it, what would that chart look like? And I actually may put that up for the audience. So like one word here, one word here. So like I can start saying yang is what we just said, tense, right? And then the yin would be relaxed. That's like
Well, the perfect definition, at least as far as my talking with my MD, is the fact that yang wastes energy. We know that from Qigong theory.
it exerts.
It exerts, all right? So we classify, or I classify in my writings and stuff, I classify yang as radiative, which means it, it's radiating energy.
It's like the sun. The sun is always
Exactly.
radiating energy.
Exactly.
And it's very yang.
Exactly.
Whereas the moon is receptive. Which is what you say is yin, right?
Correct. Because it stores, it brings calm, it's cool, it's not hot. It just stores the energy. Case in point, in our life, the difference between males and females, can you imagine if a male was the one that was going to carry a child for 9 months, based upon the fact that they use up their energy because they're, young or radiative, the issue of childbirth would be complicated for us.
Because there's not enough nourishment.
That's correct. And there's not enough conservation of energy. And as you know, in our classes, we can go deeper than that.
Would you say, sorry to interrupt, but would you
No.
say is that why statistically one of the reasons why men die earlier than women is that
Totally.
because they exert more life force throughout their life?
Totally. In fact, it is my understanding that before conception, the reason why there's more females being given birth rather than males is because males, the XX takes off, and boy, he takes off and he's on a run, and the XY is like, boogie, we'll get there,
Yeah.
but there's more of them as well.
Yeah.
The XX, my understanding, he dies in 24 to 36 hours, whereas the female X lives up to 72 hours.
It's like a sprinter versus a marathon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So all throughout, in our
It shows
physical life,
Yeah.
sticking with us now when we go into the spiritual and everything else, it's still there. I guarantee you, it's one of the principles of life.
Well, that's interesting because for me, I always saw the spiritual realm as a non-dual realm. Like the realm of the higher self, God, is non-dual. So like it's all one. And to me, that is represented by the circle that contains the yin yang. And that circle is one. But it has these two parts. So like for me, like I always saw the spiritual side as all of it and as one. Whereas in the physical, once things come, basically, if like this is the spiritual plane and it comes physicalized down, that's when it turns into two.
Correct.
Like the one turns into two.
Correct. Because once we're spiritually and physically in balance, we become one.
Ooh, yeah.
All right?
That's it. Yeah. Absolutely.
And to become one, your whole being, and spiritually, mentally, and physically, has to be operating together or as one.
Yeah.
And for those that are religious, God is the circle that encompasses all of that within there, and that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. That's awesome. So let's go back to that kind of the chart and the table. So let's look at some other attributes that you would associate. Let's just go through yang, and then we can go through yin, or we can go through it both at the same time. What other attributes would you associate as yang?
Yang, well, of course, its ability to do things, right? And to do the things that males principally do. Not that it can't be done by females. I don't want to go there. What I'm just saying is, things that are attributed mainly to males, which is more of a physical, heavy lifting and things like that. That's yang.
So activity is yang, just in general, activity being active, and then rest or non-activity is yin. Inactive.
Well, a rest or calm and meditative type of actions. Yeah, you're calm.
Right. So it's like being and doing. Doing
Correct.
is yang, being is yin. Would you say that like fire is yang and then water is yin?
Totally.
And then hot is yang, cold is yin.
Right. Day is yang.
Day is yang.
Night is yin.
Yeah.
Day you use, you work, you're doing all your duties, and
Yeah.
at night you rest.
And then inhale is yin, actually.
Correct.
That's fun because I always feel like inhale should be yang because it's to me feels like an activity I'm doing. But because you're taking in, it's considered yin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not only that, it's because you exert when you exhale. Remember, all your exercises, anything that you do, you bodybuild, remember that you used to exhale when you pushed.
Right. That's true.
So, and furthermore, as we've talked in our theory classes, inhaling nourishes the brain and the bone marrow, whereas exhaling nourishes the muscles and the tendons.
Right. And that's from Qigong knowledge.
Correct.
Wisdom. Yeah, I think that's good enough. I think in terms of attributes, we can maybe like elaborate on it at some other time. But I think just the way you put it always is the radiative versus the receptive. That's a really good way to imagine it.
Well, it's easier for us in English to understand that.
Yeah.
One of the sad parts about a lot of what I've run into in my 20 years is the overindulgence sometimes, I say, of trying to use Chinese language, some of which is old Chinese language, terms, and try to explain something to our society today, and more so on the Western society. And the whole practice, the whole scientific basis for what we do is lost because people don't understand, and it's not because they don't want to, it's because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, for
and,
sure.
and that's something we need, a bridge we need to try to cross, and in that aspect of it. But
What are your notes there? What else did you want to cover about the yin yang and the qigong?
Well,
the use of yin yang and qigong.
one of the things that, and I think you'll have to put this graph up, all right, when we talk about. One of the other things is that our body clock, if you will, if you'll look at a yin-yang symbol, where and we'll have that up for you, and look at that symbol and where the white is versus where the black is, and surrounding that is going to be the 24-hour clock. And that's very, very important to us on a physical, from a physical perspective. Each organ, major organs, operate, get nutrition, are optimum in a 2-hour period during that 24-hour clock. And, look at that and look at the organs attached to what time of day it is. And it's pretty interesting to note what organs are in high peak and which ones are on the low peak. High peak being if it's midnight to 1 o'clock or midday, for instance, to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, your heart is the one that's operating at its utmost. So it's not just a symbol. There's more to it than that. And as we can see from a medical perspective, Qigong medical perspective, you have that 24-hour clock representing 2 hours worth of organs that are, functioning in your body. So that to me is real important. I use it a lot when we're doing clinical work as part of not a diagnosis or assessment perspective so much as for a healing. Now, let's say you've got, urinary bladder problems. I'm not going to have you wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and start exercising. No, but understand that would be the optimum, for you working if you're having those kinds of issues. So, other than that, it's not mysterious. It's very definitely a rule that we in the universe live by. One of a few, but nevertheless, it is a rule. Mm-hmm. And I look forward to questions.
Yeah, so do you think that do you think that balance looks different for each individual? Like, for example, are some people more prone to be more yang or yang, and then some people are more prone to be more yin, and that balance for them looks different than what it would look like for another person?
That's a real good question, and it's not an easy one to answer with just a yes or no. Mm-hmm. And let me explain why. When you have a male, you expect the male to be yang and a female to be yin, right? For the reasons that we've stated before.
Not in 2022.
Well, but and that's where I was headed to, was the fact that in each and every one of us is different. Some will have the need or the physical. I don't even know how to refer to it. Tendency. Temperament. Yeah, temperament. That's good. Perfect, actually. To be very aggressive, constantly being aggressive without any knowledge, both mentally and physically, of being calm, being non-aggressive. So
in kindergarten, before people are they have developed like a full-fledged personality, even at that stage and age, you have those kids that are just like looking for a fight all the time. And then you have those like I was, that was just trying to befriend everyone and avoid a fight and be left like I just didn't want to be, in a conflict. Right. And I remember as a kid, I was like, oh, that person just has a temperament of wanting to fight people. Mm-hmm. I don't have that. That's clearly a type of person. Right. That just and people that I'm sure that make it to UFC or MMA, for the most part, for the majority of them, they have to have the type of temperament that loves to fight.
Right.
Somebody else that would be a nightmare for them to be just fighting for life or something like that. So you're saying that temperament exists as well, based on Qigong within people.
But you're the perfect example. Remember when you came here? You were totally in the non-violent state.
Very much so, yeah.
Right. And when we finally reached a point where you started taking Kung Fu, which you were opposed to, but thanks for going ahead and giving it a shot, then you realized, though, that, oh, wow, it's not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I can still be the non-violent, but then I don't have to be the afraid. I'm not saying you were afraid, but that is, to a lot of people, what holds them back from getting into an aggressive exercise. And it doesn't have to be Kung Fu. It can be lifting weights. But there are a lot of people who don't want any kind of violence in their lives. And until they understand the yang and the yin and the balance that they get from balancing the both, rather than being too much yin and not having enough yang, that leads to sickness as well, and in every way. So it's all a matter of balance. I'm not a violent person, but I can probably take care of myself should the situation arise. But that's the last thing I want to do. But and I think you might remember the question that was brought up. Master, you teach us how to fight, but then you tell us never to be aggressive, never to fight. How do you bring these philosophies together?
Yeah.
And I think the answer to that is I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And I love that. I've probably said it before. And
You do love that. You say that a lot.
I do, because it matches us in our society today more than anything that stands and prevails in my mind. Why are these people doing this? And that one little, shall we say, saying, and that's why it's dear to me.
Yeah. Well, I say this too. It's like when I finally learned martial arts and just became more comfortable with the yang side, is when I felt like I could fully be calm and be peaceful, which was weird because I thought to me being more yin represented being more peaceful. But when I balanced my yang, all of a sudden my yin was free to be itself.
Yeah.
It was I felt fully safe and at peace. Because prior to that, I think there was this underlying fear, and it was almost like I am being yin in order to self-preserve and be safe and avoid conflict. So there's this underlying anxiety of avoidance of danger and being afraid of that while trying to be calm. But when I felt like I fully can take care of myself, then all of a sudden I was calm. I was actually what I wanted to be. Right. And so this idea of balancing the yin and yang really helped me find that center versus just trying to go to one side. And you always share the story of these two monks that one tried to live fully yang and one tried to live fully yang to see which side is better. Both died.
Yeah.
It was different reasons, but yeah.
Those were two, what am I trying to say here? They weren't Buddhists, they were Taoists, so two Taoist monks.
And this is a true story?
True story. My understanding of that is a true story. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they both perished in their own way.
Both dwindled away. Yeah.
So ultimately, there is no, when you're living in those extremes, there's no peace necessarily to be found there.
No.
Yeah.
In either extreme, no, there isn't. And that's the thing about our society, which leads into other things like humility. And I know we can do a whole thing about humility, but when you notice or you're around somebody that's very humble, if they're humble because they're balanced, then you also sense their power. Okay? And that's what sort of messes with people's minds, is understanding that humility is power. You're humble because you don't need to prove anything to anyone. And that's your balance. Yeah. You're happy with who you are, where you are, and what you are. And that's important in life. And it's hard to get there for a lot of people. But it's of the utmost in terms of, preservation and living correctly.
Yeah. And so going back to balance in terms of temperament. So you were talking about there are those type of people that are just really young. So balance for that type of person, would that look different? What balance, okay, so what balance, to me, there's a type of person that would probably love to do yoga every single day and kind of stay away from more yang activities. And their balance may be just doing 2 days a week, some sort of yang exercise.
Okay.
But is there another type of person that is just temperamentally yang, and the balance for them would be not doing 3 days a week they do yoga, 3 days a week they do lifting weights. Not that perfect balance, but like 5 days a week they lift weights, and maybe 2 days a week they do yoga. Is that still balanced, even though it's not perfect balance? Does that make sense? Yeah. So it does look different. Balance looks different for each person, right?
Once you start doing it, once you really do it for a certain amount of time, because everyone is different. Once you get started on the journey, your body's going to start talking to you, and you're going to listen, because your body's always talking to you. It's whether you listen to what your body is saying.
Yeah.
Is the thing. And once you reach the point where you're listening, then your body is going to tell you, okay, let's do 2 yoga this week and 3 whichever it is, bodybuilding or as such. But it's getting in touch with your body and listening to your body, and that's where we in Qigong go.
Right. The inner guidance. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else you want to say about the yin yang and Qigong in particular?
No. Other than, it is a factor in everything that we do. And if from a life's perspective, I've heard the statements that says, people die the way they live. I don't know exactly. I haven't dissected that 100% yet. But if I look at it from a perspective that if we live and strive to be in balance, then our death will, I assume, be smoother and probably not full of violence.
Yeah.
And everything that we do is, again, for every action there's a reaction. If you treat somebody nice, chances are they're going to reciprocate. If they don't reciprocate, then they're not worth being around. So, in many cases, the reciprocation from being kind and understanding and all of that doesn't occur immediately, but it does.
Yeah, it's like planting a seed.
Correct. That's very good.
Awesome. Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Like Sifu Tom said, if you have any questions, leave them below in the comments. Reach out to QigongofTulsa.com. That's the website for the school, correct? And you can reach out to Tom from there. Anything else?
No.
Awesome.
I mean, again, I'd love to hear your questions and opinions too. By the way, he who teaches learns.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and share with those whom you think may benefit from the information. So thank you. We'll be back with more videos soon. Bye.
If you enjoyed the videos you just saw, I'd like to invite you to a live Zoom session on May 29th at 2 p.m. Central Time. We're going to present to you 3 exercises that are very powerful. If you're a beginner, fantastic. You'll pick this up, and the longer you do it, the better you'll get the results. And then for those of you that already do Qigong exercises, hey, add 3 more. So please join us May 29th at 2 p.m. Central Time, and you'll learn some exercises, and we'll just have a good time. So thank you, and we'll see you then.